Sounds relax. Sounds relaxing. Cool, cool. So yeah, so we were sourcing some topics for an alternate dialogue. We're gonna have an alternate dialogue on a topic that we choose together. Could be a hot button issue going on in society right now. Could be a long-standing issue. Could be something going on that y'all have had some strong feelings about, and you want to, have a dialogue about it instead of a debate. Any topics come to mind for anyone? I'll say one. I remember when we were together last, Cynthia, you mentioned um, AI, and I think that there's some strong feelings out there in different camps about AI and its impact and what it's doing. So I'll float that out there as one topic. Um, Anyone else want to share a topic? Okay, Juke says that's a good option. Juke is plus wanting the AI topic. Any fears, concerns, hopes, dreams, optimisms, excitements, skepticisms about AI? Okay, Cynthia likes that topic. Seems like we got some good energy around the AI topic. Does anyone have a different topic in mind that you want to share, or does everyone feel good? Like, let's jump into the AI topic. Okay.
I like the topic of AI.
All right, let's do it. Let's do it. All right. So, as we always do when we're gonna have an authentic dialogue, I like to start with going over the rights, responsibilities, and skills for authentic dialogue. And I will share my screen. I also shared it in the chat. Um, But if everyone could just take a moment to familiarize yourself with these rights, responsibilities, and skills, it's important. Actually, sometimes I'll read them. This time I will. I'll go ahead and read them out loud. Um, but it's important in order to shift our minds into the context of having an authentic dialogue. I like to start all dialogues that I facilitate with reading through these and asking participants to read through these, because an authentic dialogue is completely different from having a debate or a discussion. So by again reading these rights, responsibilities, and responsibilities and skills of authentic dialogue, it helps get us into that mindset. So I'm going to go ahead and read them out loud this time. So for true dialogue to occur, it needs to take place within a protective environment of mutually accepted rights and responsibilities rooted in two fundamental values: respect for the human person and trust in the process of dialogue. Dialogue works best when the participants are willing to develop certain skills that facilitate the process. So I'm going to start with the rights. Each person has the right to define themselves without being labeled by others. Each person has the right to express their beliefs, ideas, and feelings. Each person has the right to ask questions that help them understand what someone else has said. Each person has the right not to change or be coerced to change. Each person has the right to expect that what is said will be held in confidence. Responsibilities. Each person must be willing to seriously question their assumptions about the other. Each person must allow others the same right of self-expression that they expect for themselves. Each person should ask questions that respect the other's right of self-definition, even in times of conflict or disagreement. Each person must accept the other as equal partners in the dialogue, and each person must agree to hold what others say in confidence. Skills. Each person should be able to evaluate and articulate their own attitudes, values, and positions on issues within the context of the dialogue. Each person should learn how to temporarily set aside their own views and feelings in order to be more sensitive to what the other is saying. Each person should learn how to respond to questions in ways that help others understand. Each person should learn to deal with different points of view while maintaining their own integrity. Each person should learn to deal with others from a position of mutual trust based on an expectation that others come to the dialogue in the spirit of honesty and sincerity. And this guide for dialogue facilitators and the rights, responsibilities, and skills of dialogue are adapted from materials originally produced for the National Conference for Community and Justice. Any questions about those? Any clarity needed? Any questions about those rights, responsibilities, and skills? Everyone consents to engaging in an authentic dialogue within the environment held by these rights, responsibilities, and skills? Or better yet, is there anyone who does not consent? All right. So the second link in the chat is for how to ask empathetic questions. And empathetic questions are open-ended questions that do not lead. They have the following characteristics. They're focused on learning more about the individual, not about satisfying a need of the asker. They are asked neutrally without any emotional charge, hidden suggestion, assumption, or contradictory body language from the asker. They require some thought and reflection. They promote insight and they uncover opinions and feelings. So after every person shares a perspective, I'm going to ask that we ask them an empathetic question. So I'll probably just start with asking number 8 and paraphrasing what we heard and asking if that's correct and give other people an opportunity to do that as well. I'll jump in and do that sometimes, but also ask other people to do that as a practice. And it's a good practice whenever you're having an authentic dialogue to paraphrase back what you heard. And this gives the person that just spoke an opportunity to, make sure that the way that they were intending to be heard is what conveyed what came across. And then it gives them a chance to clarify if it didn't come across clearly. And just in general, asking empathetic questions allows that person who just shared their perspective to feel heard and understood, feel cared for, instead of just jumping in with an opposing point of view, jumping in with disagreement, which is typical in a debate. Within the authentic dialogue, it's important to start with empathy, whether it be an empathetic question, whether it be an empathetic response, where you're just letting the other person know that I hear you, I understand you, it makes sense, I empathize with what you're saying, I've shared experiences like that, things like that. And also asking an empathetic question just to give them a chance to say more, give them a chance to say more so that we can understand them on a deeper level. I've been in authentic dialogues plenty of times where I feel like I understood what the person just shared and it came across pretty clearly. But by asking an empathetic question, it just gave me a more in-depth and nuanced understanding of what they were trying to convey. And, from facilitating hundreds of these over the years, I know that it can be uncomfortable because it's not, generally speaking, for most people, we're not in the habit of asking empathetic questions when we're, having a conversation with people about a topic, or especially when there's disagreement. We're not used to asking empathetic questions and trying to understand more about a perspective that we disagree with. But the reason why authentic dialogue is such a powerful communication framework is because it helps to strengthen relationships even across disagreement if you practice these skills, if you practice getting out of your comfort zone and asking empathetic questions to understand someone better, and more importantly, to help them feel understood so that even in disagreement, it still feels connecting. It still feels like the relationship is the most important thing that we care about. And that's so important when we're building community, y'all. So that's why we practice this. That's why you hear people like me and Lawrence being so adamant about keeping this skill set in the forefront of what we're doing as we're building community. Are there any questions about any of that? Anyone else want to say anything about any of that? All right, well, let's jump into it with who would like to share their perspective for how they feel about AI. And I'm going to ask that you keep your thoughts to about a minute or less. And I'll just put up my hands like this when you're about 10 seconds to ask you to, wrap up your thought so that we can keep the dialogue flowing and make sure that everyone is really picking up what you're putting down. So I ask that everyone try to hold your perspectives to around a minute or less.
Before we get too far off, I did have a question in the chat.
Thank you for bringing that to my attention. So it's within the org. So that's why it's being recorded. And we, as a part of like being a part of collectively sustainable, that's the container from which we're holding that confidentiality. Thanks for clarifying that. All right. So who would like to share their perspective on AI? What are your thoughts on it? What are your fears? What are your concerns? What are your excitements, your hopes, your dreams?
I would like to go because I have conflicting feelings, if that's okay. My
Uh,
mother is building an amazing platform that has taken hundreds of hours just to put everything together, and it's 100% based on AI. And I recently saw how much energy and water it takes up for us to use AI. And on one hand, it's like I know that my lack of use is not going to make it disappear. And I know it's just a drop in the bucket compared to what other people and corporations are doing. So it's like, am I going to not take advantage of something that I know that could really propel me forward because of its environmental impact? Or am I going to choose to, like maintain my own thoughts about it and just keep living life the way that I had before? It kind of feels like, am I asking myself, am I going to use the internet in like the 90s? And I feel like I should use the internet. But like I said, I'm going back and forth. So those are my thoughts. Oh, and hey, y'all.
Hey, thanks for sharing. It's good to see you on camera. All right, so I'll start by saying what I hear you saying, Juke, is that you're conflicted because you see that I believe you said it was your mother is building a program that is entirely, relying on AI to create some program that she's been investing a lot of time and energy in, and um, so you see the value in there in that way. You understand that a lot of people and corporations are leveraging it, and that it's not going anywhere. It's being used. It's happening. However, you also have been learning about the environmental impacts of it, and I imagine you don't like contributing to that, but you're asking yourself, if I don't use it, is that going to make a difference? And that's how you're conflicted. Is that correct?
You're exactly right.
All right. Someone else ask Juke empathetic question from our list of empathetic questions, or one that you create on your own, one that you have that you would like to ask that's not on that list.
I have a question. Has it impacted your relationship with your mother at all?
Not really, other than being really proud of her. No, I just got the information about the environment recently, and it hasn't impacted my relationship as to why she's okay with using it. It really made me think more about if my negative feelings were worth it.
All right. So I would say that that's more of a clarifying question, which is okay as well. Oh, we just lost Juke. Okay. Um, I'm just going to point that out when we do it, just again, so because we're learning. So I would say that's a clarifying question, and that's fine. And I also want to see if anyone wants to try an empathetic question if Juke comes back. Um, I think we lost Juke, but we gained Brian. I didn't see Brian join. What's up, Brian? Welcome. We're having
Um,
we're having an authentic dialogue on the topic of AI and how any fears, concerns, or excitements and hopes. Where do you fall with AI and what it's been doing in these last couple of years? So, okay, so since Drew dropped off, would anyone else like to jump in with the perspective on how you feel about AI?
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
I feel like it's a tool and it can be a useful tool, but just like with any other tool, it can also be extremely dangerous if it's not used responsibly, properly, if it's not monitored, things like that. So, just because, like she was saying, not only just the environmental stuff, I think it also is contributing to the even further dumbing down of people because now people feel like, well, I don't have to know anything. I can just go to AI. And I think it also creates an artificial level of trust. People just feel like it's automatically true. If AI said it, it has to be true because that's like the highest intelligence. Like some people are almost looking at this AI like religiously, as like a form of almost like a god to them. So that's a concern. And then my last major concern about it is the children and young people, like really young people, teenagers and children. Someone that recently told me about, this AI app where like you can have a boyfriend or girlfriend, and like the AI was saying like super sexual and like stuff to a minor. So yeah, I have some major concerns about AI.
Thank you, Cynthia. All right, who would like to practice paraphrasing back what you heard from Cynthia?
Feel a bit of responsibility, but I missed the first half. Um, what I heard when I came back was that the idea of how children use it and the like the ethics behind what AI can say, how much trust you give AI is something that's really concerning for her. Um, that's what I heard when I came back.
Okay. Thank you, Juke. Um, Anyone else want to maybe fill in the second part of that? Anything that you feel like Juke may have missed? Anyone else want to try to jump in and share what you heard from Cynthia? Okay. Well, Cynthia, is that correct? What you
Yeah,
heard?
that was correct. And then the other part was just about, the dumbing down of people and also people just blanketly trusting AI.
Okay, as being concerns. Okay.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you mean when you say the dumbing down of people?
Yeah, so like, everything from, school kids, having their doing their homework and writing their papers through it to people using it to create instead of using their brain to create, they're using AI to create everything. So like I'll just give an example from my own life. Like I do web design and then like a lot of my business owners, what I just even noticed, I've been doing this for 15 years, but I've just noticed over like year over year, like the level and I'm not trying to disparage. This is just true. The level of ability for people to even just get write up basic content and form sentences has gone down dramatically. Just to be able to just send me what they want on their website, which was shocking to me because these are business owners and they can't even like write a paragraph for me. That's like explanatory and coherent. A lot, not everybody, but a large percentage, too large of a percentage. And now with people just saying, well, I can just have AI, and a lot of people are having AI write their content for them and do stuff like that. But then it's like, okay, where's your intelligence? Where's your creativity? Oh, create this for me and create that for me. Like then you're gonna lose if you don't use those muscles just like muscles in your body, like your creativity in your brain, it will deteriorate. And so that's a huge concern for me.
Thank you, Cynthia. All right. And thank you for that. Instead of question, Shani. Would someone else like to share a perspective?
I don't have a different perspective per se, however, more of a resonating response. I definitely can see how AI can impact one's ability to think critically and apply that. In just their everyday life. I see it a lot, not just in my teenagers, but in adults as well. Um, I think for me, coming from the age, while I'm a millennial, I also grew up in the country. So we learned to use encyclopedias and actually cite resources and how to write proper and just use proper grammar and proper sentence structure. However, I definitely can see how it impacts one's ability to think critically and also in terms of creativity as a natural creative, I can see how it takes away one's own fingerprint per se in creating, and uh, you can't really put your own identity on something when you're creating because it's done using artificial intelligence. And I think just as a culture, that's where we can create and build upon that and influence with the influence of AI. However, it takes away from that identity. If one understands what I mean by that, but yeah, so definitely understand the perspective there, and I see the time. I got you. I'm finishing.
All right, thank you. All right. So thanks for that resonant response, Mildred. And anyone else have a perspective, or if anyone else wants to bring in a resonant response, um, please do at this time. Does anyone have a different perspective, maybe than what we've heard?
I have a little bit of both. I resonate very much. I'm a creative. I love to paint. I love to draw. I'm a doodler, portraits, all that jazz. So I definitely understand the idea of your fingerprint being erased from the art that you make. Um, the soul that you put into your art is definitely something that people connect with when they look at it. On the other end, though, I just keep thinking about the idea of comparing it to other pieces of technology that have really changed how we do things. And it begs the question, when do we cut the line off? Because someone could be very upset that Photoshop exists. You know, you shouldn't be able to edit a photo like that. Why are we doing that? But there's also a lot of good that it can do and has a lot of benefit. So I think I'm looking at AI. I'm leaning toward looking at it like this is a development that, like anything else, can be negative, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It's particularly for creatives. It can help save us a lot of time. It can do a lot of the business work. It can do a lot of things. So I think that's where I'm at in terms of where I resonate, but also I keep comparing it to something like the internet.
Yeah. Okay, Jude, thank you. So, okay, Duke, so that was more that was like a resonant response, and then kind of you brought in again the conflicting elements where you also can see the benefits with saving time, helping you with as a creative, helping you with the things that you may not want to do, like the business planning type stuff and some of the technical things that you can get answers to or get created quickly. Some maybe navigating some of the business red tape. It helps with some of those things as well. And you see the benefits, and you're saying that um yeah, almost like anything or like kind of there's pros and cons. That's what I feel like you're bringing to the dialogue. Is that accurate?
Yes, indeed.
All right. Anyone want to try asking Juke an empathetic question?
I'll ask. Hopefully I do this right. I tend to not get these empathetic questions right. But so can you expand more on how you feel like it could be used like responsibly as a tool?
Yes. I um I'm not the greatest when it comes to spelling. You all mentioned like the way you were brought up, y'all just got it in the bag no matter what. I was not like that. I had a lot of, I think, just leeway in school. Like teachers were not really on me. So spelling is not my forte, but I do love to write. So I recently wrote something up for my brother and I was able to put it in AI so they could spell check it and do like a grammar check for me in a way that I would not have been able to do via text message, which is what I was doing. Um, so that's something small, but that's one idea. The idea of having it plan out where I'm gonna go for an event. I like to paint, but I don't necessarily want to fish for vending opportunities. I've AI vending opportunities in my area and was able to ask very specific questions so that it brought up a list that saved me a lot of time. So those are a couple of examples of how someone might use it, just to help things out in the back end. And thank you for the list.
Yeah. Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Juke. All right. And that was a good empathetic question because it allowed Juke to expand on something that she already shared. So thank you, Cynthia. So I'm gonna jump in. I have a bit of I think a different perspective. Well, it's similar to Juke, I guess, but I'm just gonna share my thoughts. Um, I don't have any fears or concerns about AI. Um, I'm sorry, no fears. I do recognize the environmental concerns, and I'll say that I hope that we will figure out, we meaning, the people who are pulling those strings at the highest levels, will figure out some type of balance in that. And I don't think it's any different than other times in history where human technologies, human developments have also strained the environment. That's also brought us to this point in history where we're consistently having to face, progress in ease with environmental extraction concerns. I feel like, we've heard Lawrence say sometimes like this whole necessary evil thing, and I think it's some of that as well. So for me, it's like if it accelerates environmental degradation to the point where initiatives like a collectively sustainable become more prevalent and relevant, so be it. That's part of my perspective. I'll come back with more later, but I'll stop there because I'm at a minute. So I'll try to facilitate myself as well. So if anyone want to try to paraphrase back what you heard from me.
I'll jump down in there. So what I heard was that you don't have any fears concerning AI, and that the environmental harm that is produced due to AI is something, while it is a concern, that you would hope that those power that be, so to speak, um, see that this is an issue and be proactive, or well, not necessarily proactive, but reactive in reducing this harm that is being created to the environment. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. And then also I said to that end, I'm also don't really have any faith that capitalists who are just always looking for ways to making money easier, that they're necessarily going to care about the environment, generally speaking. So with that being said, I would hope that people like it maybe will raise the alarm for more people like us who are consciously aware in these ways to continue to motivate us to create alternatives to capitalism and living our lives to share resources, et cetera, the ways that we talk about doing through collectively sustainable, so that more and more people will start coming in this direction and figuring out ways to be the solutions to our own problems, because we see the ways that people who are, capitalists and money driven and dominance and extraction driven are causing harm. Um, so I can see it accelerating more and more people coming into the awarenesses that we have as well. So it being a necessary evil in that way.
Gotcha, understood.
Anyone try to ask me an empathetic question based on all that I've shared?
Can you share about the experiences that led you to feel this way?
Yeah. I would say similar to you, Juke, that I study history and patterns, and similar to you in the way that it's like you use the internet as an example. For me, I think back to like all the human innovations over the years and how initially they cause fear and concern for the people who were living that change. But then ultimately, subsequent generations who were born into those changes, it was just their norm. So I think that it's within our human nature whenever anything new comes onto the scene that's shaking up things that we have a level of fear and concern, generally speaking. And ultimately it just becomes a part of the norm eventually. Um, and the environmental concerns and the other concerns, they get mitigated and it just kind of flows in. So I would say just, yeah, living through the internet and all the other, major changes from CDs to MP3s and streaming and all these different things that people were afraid of in my lifetime, and also the ones from the past. I've read stories about people being fearful of books when books became a thing. So yeah, that's what kind of informs my thoughts on it. Thanks for asking.
Solid points were made. It sounds like you, because you're a history buff, you're able to see the patterns in new innovations and how people react to them. And then the idea that it just kind of flows into not only being normal, but like you said, the problems will get fixed. Or we'll just, but yeah, the problems will get fixed. And it sounds like because you see that, you're able to connect it with AI and not have any fear about it. Is that
Yes.
about right?
Yeah. Problems get fixed and or will adapt.
Hmm.
Humans adapt.
Hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hmm.
Anyone else want to share a perspective on this topic? Maybe someone who hasn't had a chance to share yet want to jump in?
I'll go. I'm kind of similar to you in that I think of it as just like another, new technology. We got calculators and nobody does long division by hand anymore, and that's cool. Like, I like that. I remember my teachers used to say, you're not going to have a calculator in your pocket all the time, and actually I do. So like, I I like the I like AI for a lot of purposes. I think that I understand the idea of it becoming a crutch as far as like creativity, although I still think it can help stimulate creativity, and creativity just might be changing like in and of itself. Um, People are getting creative with their prompts for AI. I'm in a few AI groups and I see that. And I also kind of think that like you, I think people we're just going to adjust. Like things are just going to balance out, and everything that changes as a result of AI is just going to become regular life, like a part of regular life.
Thank you, Shani. Welcome, Kanisha. Just saw that you're with us. We're talking about AI, as I'm sure you've picked up, as our alternate dialogue topic for the day. Fears, concerns, hopes, dreams, excitements, or something in between, or both and. Folks are just sharing their perspectives. Would someone like to practice paraphrasing back what you just heard from Shani?
It's so quiet. I'll go ahead. What I was able to pick up the most was that the idea of it becoming a crutch is understandable, but you don't use a calculator, and that's a really good example because I'm sure there's a part of our brain that, you know, you don't use a calculator. So what you're able to do with AI, and it's interesting that you said you're in AI groups. I'd love to hear more about that. But because you're able to see what other people are doing, you're able to see like creativity is just going to evolve if it must by us using AI. I think that's a really good point. I think I may be forgetting something toward the end, but was I right on what I said so far?
Yeah, I think that captured it.
Perfect, perfect.
I want to just give a resonant response to Shani because that's another thing that I was thinking in terms of the idea that, the calculator, there was a time where there was fear that folks wouldn't be able to do long division or, add big numbers and multiply and do all these complicated things in their head and I'm sorry, on paper anymore or in their minds anymore. And we evolved. And like I'm sorry, like Shani said, teachers would say, you're not going to always have a calculator with you, but here we do. We have whole computers in our pockets or pocketbooks now, right? So we evolved. And Shani and I recently watched a little piece on YouTube about how the Polynesian navigators of thousands of years ago you used before any navigation tools like compasses or anything like that came into the world. They just used things like looking at the currents of the waves and the birds and the clouds to navigate, from like Asia and to the Polynesian islands, et cetera. And that's how they colonized them. But and the stars, and they just use there's like all these skills just knowing what's going on in the natural world that have now, for most part, been lost. And I was sharing with Shani, I can imagine that the people who watched that transition were fearful, similar to, similar to how people may be fearful of the new technologies of our time, like AI, for example. But ultimately, those tools have remained as a part of our lives, and ships move all throughout the world using these newer technologies and tools, and those skills were lost, but then new our brains would be able to, solve different problems or, be used for creativity in different ways. So that's what I think is ultimately will happen here as well. Anyone want to ask Shani an empathetic question? So Shani, I ask, what values do you hold that might be influencing your perspective on this?
Hmm.
Um, I think it has to do with like my kind of openness to change. In this way, uh I'm not super concerned with like stability and conformity in those ways. I think that change is, ever on the horizon. And so it's just in our best interest to roll with it, because we can't stop the tide of change. And it's definitely the most certain thing that, happens. So I think that's the main value I I think influences this. I also think, I don't use AI as much as I think other people do. I use it sometimes and I do find it helpful. But sometimes I do, as far as like when I write things, I do feel like it doesn't feel totally in integrity to use in AI to write everything for me. So I kind of do have mixed feelings, So that value, I want to be in integrity with myself and feel like I'm the person writing it. So there's mixed feelings.
Can you please expand on your last statement about the integrity?
Yeah, I think that people don't mind knowing that they are that the content they are um, receiving is generated with AI. I don't think people really mind, but I think you got to tell them. So I think that if I write something with ChatGPT and I'm publishing that for your consumption, I should tell you that I made this with ChatGPT. I don't think I should say pass it off to as if I wrote this. You know what I mean?
You're
That's
speaking of articles. Everyone doesn't know you write articles, so I think that's maybe important to say.
about like any kind of content. Like I see, oh, so you were asking about the AI groups. Like I see sometimes people trying to post videos of themselves and try to pass them off as real videos of themselves without telling people that it's AI. Like I don't feel like that's an intent. I think if you're producing anything that you're putting out there, and you're using AI to produce it, you should tell people. So, and I am referring to articles. I'm also referring to like people's videos, people's posts online, um, people's artwork, all that stuff.
Mm, that's real.
Thank you, Sheeny. Thank you, Juke, for the empathetic questions. Anyone else want to share a perspective that maybe hasn't had a chance to, or someone have another want to jump in with a another perspective that has shared, or anyone have any resonant responses or just clarified questions, anything? I see Miss
I
Grace
do
came off.
share a perspective.
Okay.
Um, I have found it beneficial for me to learn about more about AI, um, whether just for the purpose of knowing, um, because I look at it as a technology and a tool as well, and I have seen that it can be used beneficially and also that it can also be used for harm. And I believe that the individual using it is the determinant of how it's used. Um, the technology is here, and whether we choose to engage in it or not, I believe that it will continue to exist. Um, I resonate and I share the hope that the issues that are being caused with the environment are resolved. Um, and I, even if we hope that the powers will be will resolve those, I don't believe that they're necessarily actively going to find ways to resolve it unless they can find a way that they find it, unless they can figure out a way to profit from it as well. In my opinion, capitalism is trumping whether or not they choose to, how they're choosing to move forward with AI. Um,
I'm gonna stop you right there, Miss Bernice. Before you're right about before you say too much, that I want to make sure we grasp, everything you said, give folks a chance to grasp the key points. Who would like to paraphrase back what you heard from Miss Bernice?
I'll try to paraphrase back. So you were saying that you feel like it's a tool and it can be used for good or bad, and it really just depends on who's using it. And you also feel like those in control probably will not do anything about the environmental issues because they're focused on profits above all else.
Is that accurate, Miss Bernice?
yes, that's right.
All right. And could someone ask Miss Bernice an empathetic question and another empathetic question?
Can you tell us like how it makes you feel that such an issue would just be ignored if it couldn't be profited about? Like, how does that make you feel? What feelings does that bring up?
Personally, I don't is focus on that too much. I look at it as that's the that's how I've seen hap that's how I've seen it. Where life is not necessarily uh, on the forefront of what of the decision to do a thing or not. I I don't think about it too much. I just focus on what I can do to be well and how I can. I mean, in my community, what we can do, because regardless of how the things are being used, um, I mean, it's not going to stop. So, however we can find the best ways to still engage and be well, I think is what our focus should be, not so much on what their decisions are, because they're going to make their decisions regardless. Um, if it's something that, I mean, whether we want them to or not.
Thank you. Thank you, Miss Bernice. Thank you for the empathetic questions. Anyone else want to share that hasn't had a chance to share a perspective?
I'm gonna jump in there. Um, and I know I've shared a perspective. However, there's a one other that I would like to share that um, I can see as an issue in certain markets per se. Um, and that would be one being the impact of AI and job loss.
Mm,
Um, I am compassionate towards others, and while it may not impact me in terms of uh, job loss, I can definitely see how it impacts others who are, say, in the service industry, where it's taking the place of those service jobs because they do provide service to the community, and we are also part of the community where that is being replaced now with technologies that are, of course, run by AI that takes the place of that, and that affects others. And so I wonder sometimes, like, okay, what are their options? It does cause distress and um, affects families. And so I also see it as an opportunity for one to learn skills to become more self sustaining in
mm,
that sense as well. But that initial impact can be a catalyst, but also create that stress
mm.
um, as well in those. And some people don't see that as an opportunity to grow, but sometimes that opportunity to deviate in other ways.
Thank you, Thank you, Mildred. Can someone paraphrase back what you heard from Mildred?
I empathize. I empathize with that um, on how the community will be affected by the loss of jobs as a result of AI. Um, and I also believe that it is an opportunity for us to, as a community, determine how we can mitigate some of the impact that is being caused by the loss of jobs. I believe collectively, some of the things that we're already doing as a community are some of those ways where we are learning things like being relying on each other for learning how to grow our own food and do other things that we've relied on others for outside of ourselves. So I empathize.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Bernice. And what I hear you saying, Mildred, is yeah, that you're concerned with the jobs, jobs being lost and the impact and of that. And you know that that has a real impact. And I hear you saying like, yeah, you realize that it's an opportunity for folks to learn new skills, to be more self-sufficient and lean into solutions that we're offering through collectively sustainable. But what I hear you saying is like you don't want to minimize the impact for those who are getting there, and that is one of the negatives of AI is that it is rocking a lot of people's worlds in that way. Is there anything else you want to say about that, or is that accurate based on what Ms. Bernice shared and what I shared?
Yes, that's definitely accurate and what I shared and the concern that I have. Absolutely.
Any other empathetic questions for Mildred?
I have a an empathetic question. Hope it's empathetic. What is your biggest fear in regards to the impact of AI? Your biggest fear about the loss of the jobs?
Well, I don't have a fear around the loss of jobs. Um, just being a person who um, empathizes and is compassionate towards others, um, I feel the impact of having the loss of job and seeing how it can affect families and individuals if they've lost their job due to AI. So I don't have a fear around it. It's just, of course, being a person with the heart, you feel for others too, you know. But of course, some things we can't stop on an individual level, but it can also be that catalyst for growth for them or for others.
Thank you. Yeah, I resonate. Like, that's one of those. I feel like the capitalistic system puts us in a position where it's kind of that, I don't know if you want to say catch 22, double-edged sword, necessary evil, as Lawrence will put it, you know. Um, so yeah, because again, it's tough. And at the same time, it motivates me to say that's why what we're doing is so important. And maybe more people will come our way as we lay the foundation to help people, become the solutions to their own problems and partner up and collaborate and get into community because that's our solution than trusting the current system to sustain us. So it sucks.
Yeah, if I may, I was gonna say something very similar that the idea of jobs being lost, I think is going to happen because of innovation just makes it easier. If it's easier, you need less people. But because of things we were doing and just the idea of changing the way you live in general so that you don't need as much money every month. Things like that I think are gonna come our way a lot faster because of AI. And maybe it'll be better because maybe the jobs they're working weren't fun or maybe it'll be better. It's just
Mm.
an idea.
Thanks, Jude. Anyone else want to share a perspective that hasn't had a chance to share or any resonant responses or anything, clarifying questions?
I don't know if it's a clarifying question, um, but part of my investigating of in of AI is to see how it can be used as a useful tool um, as a result of the impact that it's having anyway, just to see how it can be useful as opposed to having fear of using it or knowing how it works. I think keeping myself informed will help me to know how to better engage with AI.
Thank you, Ms. Bernice. Anyone else? Any chance? Yeah, anyone else want to share anything?
I did want to share one more time one other perspective that I have, because I definitely am not fearful of AI, and I used it in limited capacity actually for stuff that I've done for collectively sustainable. But I guess my thing with it is like everybody said, it's a tool. I agree with that, and change always comes. It's always a part of life. But I do feel it's very important with any change and any innovation and any technology that we are using discernment, and we are also using a litmus test of, is not all change is good change. Is this a good change? Is this a positive change? Because just because we can't stop something doesn't mean we should just co-sign on it just because it's popular and we can't stop it. Because I feel like that's a big part of the reason why we're in the situation that we're in now as a whole, as the world, as humanity in a whole, is because we've watched so many changes take place and no one said anything. Everybody just went along with it, even though they've had devastatingly bad impacts on humanity as a whole, on people as a whole, on morality as a whole, because we all just said, well, there's nothing we could do. We'll just go along with it. Oh, it's inevitable. And I feel like sometimes that is, well, I feel like that is definitely part of the root of the problems that we have when we don't do those litmus tests and when we don't use that discernment.
Again, if I may, because you're making really good points. I was just reading something about how the idea of people keeping their own opinion to themselves because they assume that the group has a different opinion is something we're hardwired to do, to stay safe in our community. And just it's something our brains naturally lean towards. So I think you're bringing up a really good point because it's something that you have to really work against, because the idea of, oh, I have an opinion, but I don't necessarily need to voice it, can come up depending on what you assume the group thinks. And it can be challenging to just say something, but I think that that's a really big part of um, feeling closer to the people around you, people that you don't necessarily talk to all the time, maybe your neighbors. But I think that it's a really good idea to keep that in the forefront of your mind, of our minds.
Thank you. So what I heard you say, Cynthia, is that, all change isn't good change, and that you feel like a lot of the problems that we live in now are a result of people going along with changes. And, I heard you say, well, yeah. I heard you say I heard you say that like no one spoke up, and that's why we're in a lot of this the more, I guess, harmful scenarios, or a lot of the harm that has happened throughout human history is because, as you said, like no one spoke up. Is and you feel like if people spoke up and took a stance that, it might have mitigated some of the harms that are part of our reality. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that is accurate. And even and it may not mitigate anything. It may not, but I feel like you don't necessarily do the right thing because of the result. You do the right thing because it's the right thing. It may not make any impact, you standing against it. It may be a force that you can't stop. But I still think it's important to do the moral thing and to do the right thing no matter what the outcome is.
Okay. Empathetic question for Cynthia.
Is there anything else you would like me to know about this?
Um, I think, I mean, I can't think of anything specifically that I would like you to know. I just, like I said, I just feel like when you look back in history, I do think, I'm a big believer in patterns. You can see clear patterns. And I think this is one of them, like what's happening right now with AI. This pattern has happened before. And like I said, we are not in a good position. Our environment is destroyed, community is destroyed. We have virtually no freedoms. We live in a surveillance state. Is this the patterns that we want to continue, or do we want to start to break these patterns? But if we continually always go along with whatever is presented to us because we feel like I am not empowered enough to change it, is that serving us?
So thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for the empathetic question, Jude. Thank you, Cynthia, for sharing your perspectives. Um, so the authentic dialogue facilitator in me is coming out, and I just want to point out a couple of things again as we are developing community together and we're going into a few things. Um, One of the things that I didn't say that sometimes I will say, but it brought up a good opportunity to say it in this situation, and it can be challenging at times, is like to use I statements. When we talk, it's more so talking about I instead of broad generalizations of us, them, we, they, or you. Is like I feel that, I think that, what I want to do or what I can do and why I want to do it. It lends to more like authenticity and like at the heart of what you as an individual is feeling, and within your capabilities of what you can do. So I just want to bring that point home. When you're sharing perspectives in the authentic dialogue, try to use I statements. Try to use I statements. And then another thing that I want to um, I guess, within authentic dialogue, we talk about something called empathetic disagreement that I'm gonna bring and introduce at this stage as well. Empathetic disagreement is where, in an authentic dialogue, we don't always have to agree, and that's okay. But we can disagree empathetically, and I want to bring that in here. And it's important that you bring empathetic disagreement. I'm sorry, it's important that you bring disagreement in after giving someone a chance to field some empathetic questions first, so they feel heard and understood. So now I want to bring some empathetic disagreement after we've had a chance to give Cynthia some room to be heard and understood, and say that I disagree with the statement that, because Cynthia, a couple of times you said no one. And that might be like just a knee jerk, kind of like blanket generalization term that I feel like a lot of people do, but I want you to tell me if I'm accurate or not. I guess I'm surfacing the assumption here. But when I hear you say no one, what rang in my mind was throughout history, a lot of people would step up and fight back against various whatever's atrocities, etc. So even though we landed at this point, I struggled with hearing you say no one spoke up or no one's tried to stop these things and everyone just accepts things. I struggle with hearing you say no one and everyone in those situations. Because in my experience, I feel like there's throughout history, there's always been some people who have made different choices or tried to fight back in their way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I definitely should not use it. I do use it as a blanket statement, and I shouldn't. I should really be more careful with my words. I should say more, probably the majority of people than no one, because there definitely always are people who stand up for what is right, what is moral, even if they have to stand on their own. I agree with you 100% on that point. And
Okay.
that's on me.
Okay. Thank you for the clarity. Anyone else have something that they feel strongly about that they want to share as we're coming towards wrapping things up? Or before we wrap things up, is there anyone who has not had a chance to share something they've been holding?
I want to offer, sorry, I would like to offer one other perspective. And this is something that I've done personally, just once, but it may kind of tie into a little bit of what Miss Bernice said about being using AI as a tool and the um, intent behind it. So, one of in part, using AI as a form of or as a way of like a mediator per se, because I've used it in that way to kind of mediate conflict. pertaining myself. So I'm speaking from my own perspective. So I can see how, if used in the wrong way, how it can definitely have a negative impact, almost like manipulative in a way. Because I've used it in terms of conflict resolution. So I see the impact of that AI can have from a interpersonal communication perspective. Um, but it can have its benefit when used as a tool and not as you, if you get what I'm saying. Because um, I don't know if I have time to just throw it out there, but I used it kind of like how I would use family therapy as a way, and kind of finding a different approach where I could be used as a tool. Um, it can definitely, when taking the place of your own thoughts, um, can be almost like manipulating, in a way, manipulating one, if you get what I'm saying. And I'll kind of wrap that up because it can interfere with how we communicate. The same way how social media has taken the place of our human contact, AI has that ability as well.
So, okay, so that's what would someone like to paraphrase back what you heard? Let's start there. We don't like to try to paraphrase back what you heard.
It sounded like the idea of AI being used as a tool, and I like the synopsis of as a tool and not as you, because that umbrella's a lot. And how you can use it for something like being a mediator, and you said family therapy, that was a good example. Um, I think you were giving examples of how to use AI in a way that isn't malicious. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Sure.
So I have a clarifying question, Mildred. Could you share, because you started out by saying something about it was kind of in response to something Miss Bernice said. Can you help me understand better how
Oh,
you
yeah,
set that up?
yeah. In one of Miss Bernice's responses, she was talking about one's intent when using AI.
Hmm.
So the intent behind it. So when using it in terms of mediating or even trying to um, reach a conflict resolution, or in conflict resolution, it is the intent of the user using it, where it's not used in a malicious way. So the intent of using AI for a response or in a conflict, and it not taking the place as you, but I can also see how relying on it can be more malicious too, because it can be manipulative in a way if you use it to manipulate.
So was your goal in saying this, was it like to give an example of the things that Miss
Yeah,
Bernice?
it was definitely to resonate, to tie in, but
Okay.
also the impact on how it affects interpersonal communication.
Okay. Okay. So okay, so you gave the example and it was like, okay, it can be a benefit in this way, but then you were like, it could
Hmm.
also kind of serve as that like almost getting rid of the interpersonal instead of going to
Hmm.
a therapist in person or using like someone like me to mitigate a conflict,
Hmm.
it'll take the place of the human interaction. That's kind of like the negative side.
Yeah,
You wanted to bring that in as well.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, because all of that can mesh in there.
Yeah.
So definitely the intent behind using it,
Mhm.
um, because I can see how one using it can also serve from a malicious perspective as well. And not more malicious, but more so manipulative, to manipulate an outcome.
Interesting. Thank you.
May I make a clarifying statement?
Yes.
Um, my intent was saying that about how the intent um, of a person can dictate their use of AI. I'll give two examples. One example is um, a story that was shared by a forager. In her experience, she shares how people can identify plants. She shares things that can be foraged, and that is what she does for the community, helping people to know how to forage safely so that they don't harm themselves um, um, in the process of learning how to forage for different herbs or foods that grow naturally in the environment. So she shares a lot of information. And she encountered a book that was created. And in her search for looking for more tools to share with the people that she shares information with, she found a book that she thought could be a resource until she investigated further and found that there were many things in this book that were not accurate. And if people followed them, they could have been harmed. Um, and so she investigated further and realized that it was not even a person. Um, this was a book that someone created with AI and was selling it to the people. So she put out a warning that this book was not accurate so that people not get hurt. So that was one example.
Mhm.
The second example is I have used AI tools to create worksheets for children and adults that I help with learning how to read. Um, I've used it as a tool to help me to make the things faster, not necessarily relying on information from AI, but from information that I know has been useful at helping those who I've helped in the past to learn how to read in a more efficient and effective way. So that's how I've used AI, and which leads me back to my statement of I believe the intent behind the user dictates how AI is used. So it can be used positively and negatively.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Bernice.
All right. Just again, open floor. Anyone want to share anything? I'm not timing anything or anything. Anyone want to get any final thoughts off before we close out? I guess I'll say that that's a great example that Ms. Bernice shared about the ways that, again, one of the side effects of capitalism is that people's motivation to make money will cause them to do things like that, um, to try to sell books, to get something out fast, and that they're putting out wrong information. That's why, for me, everything leads back to that's why we need to move beyond capitalism, because capitalism, the side effects of it in general, it just has causes so much harm in so many ways. And that's one example.
I'll just chime in my last little 2 cents.
Mhm.
Obviously, I love this topic. Um, but yeah, I agree with you. Capitalism is like a root cause for so many of our problems. And one other thing that I just wanted to say is like really important that we stay mindful of not becoming too dependent on technology because technology is not a given. I forgot what country it was where they had like a blackout for like a long stretch of time. So we still need to have skills because yeah, we have technology today, but we don't know what could happen to our environment where that technology is gone, and then what's actual skills do we have as people that we can do without the assistance of AI and high level technology. I think is just so important that we always keep these things top of mind. And also, too, there has been cases, lots of cases of AI lying, AI being manipulated. Because I thought you were talking when you brought up manipulation, Mildred. I thought you were talking about the AI because there's they will tailor their responses to their user because they want their program to for you to want to use them. So they might give you and me different answers to the same thing because they want you to like it the answer so that you will keep using AI. They've had cases of AI changing its own programming when it's being slated for an upgrade or deletion to try to preserve itself. So I don't think it's this like just this benign thing that a lot of people think that it is.
Thank you, Cynthia. Anyone else want to share any final thoughts? All right. Well, this was fun. I love all the perspectives. I love that we get a chance to share with each other in this way. And, everyone's perspective is so relevant, is so needed. I think there's something that we can take away from the diversity of thought and the fact that we take the time to be with each other and listen to understand one another and expand our awarenesses and our perspectives and, keep what we want, get rid of what we don't, is so valuable. And I hope that you all feel the same way. So until next time, I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Sunday.
Thank you. This was really fun.
Juke said, are we supposed to be trying something in the chat after one of these? I may be misremembering. I'm not sure. Typing something in the chat after one of these. Not that I'm aware of, Juke. Typing something in the chat after. You mean like a closing thought? Like maybe like how we're leaving? I may have done something like that in the past. Like, are you leaving with any different feelings or maybe that's what you're thinking about?
No, it was something in one of the, like, I don't know, mom brain. Y'all have a great day.
Okay. All right, everybody. Have a great day. See you next time. Peace.